We are stopping at the most talked about private garden in Sri Lanka today, Bevis Bawa's Brief. Bevis's mother Bertha bequeathed the family rubber plantation of 81 acres in Penthota to her son, a renowned landscape architect, in 1929. He is also the brother of Jeffrey Bawa. The name Brief is derived from the fact that Bevis's father Benjamin purchased the estate from the funds paid for a legal brief. Brief is now about 5 acres in extent, but holds 106 different trees and hundreds of flora that are still being counted. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we are positive, daring, different. Ahead on the show, we talk about anti-corruption, the scourge of ragging, and the second oldest battleship in the world. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us. A wonderful thank you to our partners on the show, Srilanka Live, CDB, and the Daily Morning. Thank you so much for being with us.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and EV vehicles.
Looking back at the week that was, this is CDB Snapshot. Sri Lanka's official reserve assets increased by 4.3% to $5.64 billion in June 2024. Sri Lanka's government says it intends to collect taxes from 14 previously untaxed sectors. The Global Environmental Facility grants Sri Lanka and the UNDP $5 million for a chemical disposal project. Sri Lanka aims to combat malnutrition by launching locally produced fortified rice kernels. NASA discovers that an asteroid that just whizzed by Earth has its own moon. A rare white buffalo is born in North America's last wild buffalo herd and is heralded as an omen of change. Scientists find hydrogen sulfide for the first time in space, in an exoplanet's atmosphere, so it smells like rotten eggs.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
This is Srilanka Live News Capsule. Welcome. Verite Research recently established a governance and anti-corruption research division stemming from the backdrop of widespread and systemic corruption in Sri Lanka and the pressing need for reform and accountability. Headed by Sankita Gunaratna, the GAC division will leverage research to provide guidance on navigating complex governance challenges and also the shaping of both sectoral and general anti-corruption solutions. Sankita has been on the board of the Ankar Coalition, the Deputy Director of Transparency International Sri Lanka, and worked in company and tax law. And she's on the show today. How will this research division that you're head of contribute towards shaping an environment of governance and anti-corruption in Sri Lanka, given that it is actually the elephant in the room? No one wants to talk about it, no one wants to deal with it, but we know it's all widespread and very systemic.
If you look at the crisis that Sri Lanka is going through right now, we find that the root cause for the crisis was actually in a governance crisis. It's framed as an economic crisis, but it's in reality a governance crisis. So that's what we're hoping to address through this. If you look at even the IMF's governance diagnostic assessment that they did for Sri Lanka, which incidentally is the first that they did in Asia, it's the first time they've done it in Asia, that also recognizes that Sri Lanka's corruption vulnerabilities are macro-critical.
So it has been a gradual process of corruption that Sri Lanka has faced, and it has gone into the big league now. What do you think your findings would do to actually get the message out that this is not how it should be?
One of the main things that we need to focus on is in pushing for transparency across the board. If you look at the different sectors in the country, we have the private sector, the public sector, the political sector, and then we have civil society, the citizens. All of them would benefit more from having information out there, how decisions are made, how procurement awards are given, who owns assets in this country, who are the politically exposed persons who are vulnerable to corruption in Sri Lanka. So there's an entire infrastructure that needs to function well for us to be able to address the problem. As you said, corruption is in the grand corruption levels, so that's widespread, high level or high value corruption. So for us to be able to do that, we need to have more transparency. So pushing for reform that encourages and delivers on transparency is something that is really important. And then we need to take that information that is put out there through mechanisms like the new asset declaration system that's supposed to come out. We need to use the information to analyze what's going on, to look at trends of corruption, and then use that information to begin addressing the problem of corruption.
What is the cost to a citizen with this corruption and governance that is bad?
One is to look at the recent economic crisis that Sri Lanka went through. We have had the Supreme Court actually determine that a few individuals were responsible for the economic crisis. Now, and it shows that the economic crisis, again, going back to my first point, was not really driven by an economic crisis or an external factor or COVID-19, but by a governance crisis. The impact of corruption in that sense was almost quantifiably visible during the crisis, and we still continue to experience that, whatever we might be told. Often, corruption is referred to as white collar crime, something that happens behind closed doors. So the impact you feel is not really felt. You can't see that. The perpetrator of the corruption often doesn't understand the impact of the corruption. It's just like you're benefiting out of a large pot of money that's available and no one is really watching the pot.
And now, here's our market sketch this week. At the Colombo Stock Exchange, the all-share price index continued its downward trend from recent highs, with waning investor sentiment pushing daily turnover levels down to an average of around 1 billion rupees per day. Oil prices dipped below $85 per barrel, with worries that a weakening US economy could lower demand for crude oil. However, hope of a possible ceasefire in Gaza could reduce worries about global crude supply disruption, leading to prices stabilizing and moving downward. The high possibility of a US interest rate cut in September has kept gold prices steady at above $2,350 per ounce and close to all-time highs, given that gold appeals to investors when interest rates are lower. In London, animals are coming to life in puppet form. A new public art project will see life-sized lions and antelope puppets walk 20,000 kilometers from Central Africa to Northern Europe, symbolically fleeing from the effects of climate change. The list of the world's most livable cities is in, and Vienna takes top spot, with Copenhagen coming in second, Zurich takes third place, and Melbourne emerges fourth. Ragging is ingrained in Sri Lanka's state university culture, and it's almost the norm. 59% of university students are ragged, with 54% suffering one or more health consequences. Some brave the storm, while others succumb to it. Mental and physical abuse, including rape for both boys and girls, is commonplace. One of the most creative criticisms of ragging has got to be Rag the Musical, written and directed by Jehan Aloysius, reviewed as an excellent blend of fact and fiction when it was on the boards 20 years ago. Well, Centre Stage Productions is back with Rag the Musical at the Lionel Went on the 19th and the 20th of July. But today, director, choreographer, scriptwriter and composer Jehan Aloysius is with me to delve deeper into the scourge that has befallen our higher education institutions. Rag the Musical deals with a subject that most don't want to even acknowledge. Ragging in our universities, very rampant, very violent and very debilitating. What made you delve into this subject?
Well, it was a very personal story for me because At the time I wrote it, I had just got my letter of entrance saying that I'd got into the university, not of Colombo, but of Calania. And that very year, there were 3 incidents that really shook me and shocked me and made me realize that I needed to do more through art. First was Bara Prakash and his physical ragging, which led to his death when his kidneys failed. Then there was the technical college incident, similar incident where push-ups were done and alcohol down the throat, and he died. And then there was this one incident in the 1970s of a girl who jumped from the 2nd floor, and she was paralyzed and she committed suicide that same year. So all of that happened at the same time. I got this letter, which I have actually set to music in my play Rag, in a song called I'm In.
Are there patterns to this ragging? Is it kind of universal?
It's a vicious cycle which seems to be part of academic institutions, from schools, even to offices, factories, the military. It has its roots in the military. In Sri Lanka, it's regarded as the great equalizer. It's where people can break certain barriers, and unfortunately, there's a class element also in it. They tell students to not speak in English. Kadden kapannepa. Kadua is the language of the oppressor. It becomes a vicious cycle because the freshers and those who go through this in their first year, this initiation process, this rite of passage, then become the raggers in the next year. Unfortunately, it's not something that will disappear.
In researching for this, what did you find most difficult to digest?
One of the darkest elements, of course, is ragging and ragging-related violence, and also the politicization of ragging. It's institutionalized violence that within even the universities there are factions that are more pro-ragging and anti-ragging, and then as a result of that, there have been ragging-related violence and even deaths. And my play proved to be strangely prophetic in describing scenes that almost happened almost in verbatim, as if, and I happened to be in some of these universities the day before or whatever, and then these were enacted, and people have died because of ragging-related violence as well as the ragging itself. So it becomes a battleground. It's so sad that the intellectuals, the cream of society, if you like, the cream of the intelligentsia, if you like, or the intelligent students, find it very difficult to get into the university for free education.
What did you learn about yourself?
I've got so much more respect for the young people who are involved in volunteerism because of this project that we've been doing for the last 20 years, because I found that people get very passionate about the topic. And I've also found that there is a possibility that young people and peers can help. I've been trying to do that more in the last year, to try and establish peer leaders and to do master classes so that the youth can help the youth.
For those who have seen Rag 20 years ago, like I have, what are we to expect? Is there anything new?
It's a streamlined edition, so it's a tight edition. You have to move with the times. Audiences find it harder to actually sit through, like 3 hours sometimes. It's a new, fresh cast. It celebrates all the music, all the songs and the lyrics. As much as we spoke about the negative elements of ragging, the play is a musical at the end of the day. You'll take home the melodies and some amazing singers and performers.
Good to know, Jehan, and good luck with this. And I'm very glad you are dealing with this subject well. It's a hard dose of reality, but it's there. This is Life in 60, and we are in the sea, or somewhat. Located in Hartlepool, England, is a unique remnant of times past, the HMS Trincomalee, the second oldest floating battleship in the world. Built in 1817, after the end of the Napoleonic War, the ship was used in the fight against slavery and travelled around 10,000 miles. The ship was named after the 1782 Battle of Trincomalee, where the British and French fleets battled it out in a series of 4 battles. The ship was built by the Indian Wadia family in teak because of the oak shortages in Britain. The HMS Trincomalee, soaked in decades upon decades of history, now lies dormant at the National Museum of the Royal Navy in England. With that little bit of history, we say goodbye for this week, but we'll be back to see you next week.